enjoyed the last 4 years of relative peace in the Middle East, felt safer after ISIS was bombed into near oblivion, thankful that your tax dollars aren't funding arms for jihadists, well, get ready to dispense with all that because the neoliberal war machine is back. Remember that weird couple of days back in 2017 when Trump ordered the bombing of the Syrian airfield? It was the one single time over the past 4 years that the mainstream media praised something he did. MSNBC's Brian Williams called the missiles beautiful 3 times in the space of 30 seconds.
We see these beautiful pictures at night from the decks of these 2 U.S. Navy vessels in the Eastern Mediterranean. I'm guided by the beauty of our weapons, and they are beautiful pictures.
Well, Williams and his ilk are going to be creaming their pants over the next 4 years if Biden gets into office, because the same people who masterminded the disastrous invasion of Libya and the catastrophic policy of attempted regime change in Syria are back like a bitch in heat. Joe Biden. America is back. Syrian children right now. Biden has tapped this guy, Antony Blinken, as Secretary of State to head up foreign policy. And he was immediately lavished with praise by the mainstream media. The Guardian gushed, calling him a born internationalist who will utilize his urbane bilingual charm to soothe the frayed nerves of Western allies. They marveled at his previous appearance on Sesame Street, where he regaled Rover about the wondrous benefits and desperate hardships of refugees.
I'm talking about refugees. These are people who've had to leave their homes because life in their countries was not safe for them.
And why was that, Mr. Blinken? Do you think it had anything to do with the Obama administration, which you were a part of, toppling secular leaders like Gaddafi? Do you think it had anything to do with the Obama administration, which you were a part of, arming jihadist groups in Syria in an attempt to topple Assad? The administration's policies that you helped craft created the power vacuum that was filled by ISIS, which in turn caused the international migrant crisis. You vehemently supported the calamitous foreign policy that created all these refugees in the first place. Remember Gaddafi's warning that the Mediterranean would become a sea of chaos? Well, that's precisely what happened because of people in the Obama State Department like Tony Blinken. Oh, but Mr. Blinken really cares about the refugees. His administration made them refugees by fucking over their countries.
Well, Grover, sadly, refugees have to leave everything behind. Communities, schools, friends, even all of their favorite things.
Don't know about that. Some of them appear to be doing just fine. Even the UN admitted that 70% of them weren't even refugees. They were economic migrants.
Even though they come from many different places, they're just like you and me.
Yeah. That's not strictly true, is it? You see, Tony here has failed to mention one crucial detail. The Obama administration's proxy support for jihadist thugs in Libya and Syria, which led directly to the rise of ISIS, which led directly to the migrant crisis, also led to ISIS exploiting the refugee wave to smuggle terrorists into Europe who went on to commit mass casualty atrocities. Oh, don't take my word for it. ISIS bragged about how they did this in their own propaganda magazine. The Manchester Arena bomber was a refugee rescued by the Royal Navy from Libya in 2014. The Paris massacre terrorists hid themselves amongst the refugee wave to enter Europe. One of them was even carrying a fake Syrian passport. Several of the Brussels terrorists who helped plan the Paris massacre also re-entered Europe on the refugee wave, having fought for ISIS in Syria. The Berlin truck terrorist Anis Amri arrived in Europe on a refugee boat. The terrorist who stabbed 3 people in Reading was a Libyan refugee. The terrorist who beheaded the French school teacher was a refugee. The terrorist who beheaded a woman and killed 2 others near a church in Nice was a refugee. A Heritage Foundation study found that more than 1,000 people had been murdered or injured on European soil between 2014 and 2018 by asylum seekers or refugees. Starting to notice a pattern here.
They're just like you and me.
And no, obviously I'm not saying that all refugees are terrorists. Many of them are trying to escape terrorism in their own countries. I'm saying interventionist foreign policy creates a vacuum which is filled by violent Islamists. That drives people out of their countries on a refugee wave. The refugee wave is then exploited by terrorists who go on to commit attacks in the West. That was the Obama administration's policy for 8 years. And under Biden and Blinken, it's on its way back.
That's right.
Biden wants to boost America's refugee quota from 15,000 to 125,000 a year. While ISIS was smuggling terror cells into Europe, Obama was dropping leaflets on ISIS in Syria, while jihadists were radicalized across the continent to commit mass atrocities in Paris, Nice, Brussels, and Berlin. Obama was afraid to even utter the words Islamic terrorism. And whereas Islamic terrorism in the West noticeably declined after Trump began eliminating ISIS rather than arming them, under Biden and Blinken, it's set for a revival. Radical Islamists across the world must be licking their lips with glee. Blinken is a dyed-in-the-wool globalist, a Council on Foreign Relations member who once described Brexit as a total mess. And he's never come across a foreign intervention he didn't like. Not only did he enthusiastically support US NATO regime change in Libya, according to the Washington Post, Blinken was, quote, one of the government's key players in drafting Syria policy. He repeatedly justified arming Syrian rebels on national news networks. You want more? Blinken supported Israel's bombing of Gaza in 2014. Blinken supported Saudi Arabia's barbarous bombing of Yemen in 2015. He was Obama's point man for providing weaponry to the Saudis. The UN went on to declare Yemen the world's worst humanitarian disaster. 100,000 people dead.
That's right.
Thanks, Tony. And then, of course, the biggie. The notoriously successful 2003 US invasion of Iraq, which toppled another secular leader while bolstering Al-Qaeda and LIFG terrorist groups in the region, as well as killing hundreds of thousands of people in the process, including 5,000 US troops, maiming another 30,000, and leaving 500,000 with life-debilitating PTSD. Yeah, guess who vehemently supported that?
That's right.
In fact, Blinken's role in overseeing the pivotal two-day Senate hearing in the summer of 2002 directly greased the skids for the invasion of Iraq. This guy's bloodlust for war puts Genghis Khan to shame. And unless Trump turns it round, in just 2 months' time, he's in charge of US foreign policy. Listen, when someone's geopolitical agenda gets Hillary Clinton's seal of approval, watch out.
We came, we saw, he died.
You'll also be shocked to learn that Blinken despises whistleblowers like Edward Snowden and Julian Assange, and wants them both extradited. Oh yeah, and you remember those two other glorious components of pre-Trump American foreign policy? Drone strikes and torture. Well, under Biden, that's making a comeback too. Avril Haines, Biden's pick for Director of National Intelligence, provided legal cover for and worked closely with Obama and Brennan on Obama's tenfold expansion of drone strikes. An expansion that she enthusiastically drove home despite the fact that 90% of the victims of drone strikes were innocent civilians. Oh, but according to this simp and countless others on Twitter, she's the nicest human alive. Just a hunch, but if your entire family's just been wiped out by an MQ-1 Predator during a wedding ceremony, those probably aren't the words I'd choose. Haines is also a member of the Center for a New American Security, a think tank that has received millions of dollars in funding from weapons contractors. CIA Director Gina Haspel will report directly to Haines, who has repeatedly sung the praises of Haspel, a key architect of President George W. Bush's torture program. But I'm sure she's a nice person too. The frontrunner to be Joe Biden's pick for Secretary of Defense is Michelle Flournoy. Flournoy is such a nice person that she helped mastermind the escalation of the cataclysmic war in Afghanistan, backed the invasions of Iraq and Libya, and complained that Obama wasn't militaristic enough in Syria. Such a nice person. She also co-founded West Exec Advisors with Antony Blinken, a firm entirely based around war profiteering. The success of all three of these women has been slavishly praised by the corporate media as a win for feminism. But that's not an opinion shared by Ardar Madawi, who wrote that, quote, there is nothing remotely feminist about women in rich countries dropping bombs on women in poor countries. You'd think Muslim Democrats like Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar would fiercely oppose those who have endorsed and implemented policies that left Muslim countries in ruin. No. They fell right in line. All Tlaib was worried about was that Blinken wouldn't stop her from supporting the BDS movement, while Omar said Biden had picked a, quote, capable team that has a one-in-a-generation opportunity to reorient our foreign policy towards justice. Justice for who? Arms dealers, the military-industrial complex, jihadists that behead children and burn people alive in cages. If Trump fails in his election challenge, expect the Middle East to be on fire within 12 months. Expect ISIS to make a massive resurgence. migrants. Expect Western countries to be subsumed by another migrant crisis. Expect the threat of Islamic terrorism to intensify. Expect young Americans to be sent off to die for the sake of arms manufacturers, for the sake of neoliberal interventionist schemes that always end up in abject disaster. America First is dead. The war machine is back. The military-industrial complex is back. And where's the left? Out in the streets celebrating. Another stunning victory for the hashtag resistance. We just had an entire summer of protests and riots involving people infuriated by the treatment of brown and black people, only for them all to then go and vote for someone who is planning to bomb the shit out of brown and black people and turn their countries into hellscapes. Another stunning victory for the hashtag resistance. It's absolutely crucial for you to help me fight the war on free speech by supporting me via Subscribestar, link in description, and also signing up for my free newsletter at summit.news/newsletter.